Welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu, and I created this show to help lawyers find happiness in life with a law degree. Together with my guests, we provide the knowledge, insight, skills, inspiration, and encouragement you need to find your happy. In episode 16, I had the pleasure of sharing Danielle Liss's story of how she fell back in love with the law. And today, I am super excited to share the other half of that story. On today's show, I chat with Danielle's business partner, Jamie Lieberman. When Jamie's not working with Danielle to grow their two businesses, she's teaching as an adjunct professor, working as the director of operations and chief counsel at Type A Parent, and raising two young boys. Don't worry, I get Jamie to spill about how she juggles it all, and she shares how saying no is really the secret to having more. Let's get to the show. Welcome back to the Happy Lawyer Project. Jamie, I am so happy you could join us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
So some of my regular listeners may have heard a little about you because you are the other half of #legal. And I had your business partner, Danielle Liss, on a couple weeks ago. But for those who are new or haven't heard that episode, it'd be great if you could just start by sharing what you do.
I would love to. So I currently am the other half, as you've said, of a law firm entitled #legal. We specialize in working with online business owners, and we have an even further specialty in the influencer marketing space, where we represent influencers, agencies that work with influencers, and brands that work with the agencies and the influencers. And it's a really fantastic space because there's not a lot of lawyers that practice in that area. So it's been a lot of fun working with these business owners who often haven't had any experience with any lawyers at all, who understand their industry and speak their language.
It's such a great niche. And every time I hear the name #legal, I'm like shocked at how good it is. So on brand and like speaks to your client and your ideal, like who your audience so well.
Thank you. We were very excited to get that name.
But before we dive more into that work that you do, I'd love if you could describe for us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So I actually went to law school not straight out of college. I worked for a few years. When I came out of college, it was the dot-com boom, which even using the term .com ages me, but that's okay. And I unfortunately went through a number of .coms that as soon as I was hired, I was quickly let go because they were closing. And I eventually settled and worked for a publishing company in New York City for a few years. I was doing that until about 2001 when the economy unfortunately once again crashed, and I was faced with the notion that I needed to figure out what it is I wanted to do. During the time that the economy wasn't doing well, I was part of this company and I was negotiating settlements on contracts that this company was defaulting on, not as a lawyer. I was about 24 years old and just working there. I'm working in their operations department. And in doing so, the outside counsel that we worked with suggested that I look into going to law school because he knew that I was interested in figuring out my next step. So I took the LSAT and that went well. And I ended up going to Seton Hall Law School the following year, which was fantastic. And I went there about 5 years out of college. And for me, that turned out to be really great because it gave me the discipline to study, which we know you need to do in law school. When I came out of law school, I worked in big law, and I also ended up working as a permanent clerk for a judge. I did that for a while, and then after I had my first son, I started teaching at Seton Hall Law School and realized that I didn't think I wanted to do the full-time practice of law anymore, so I left and was only teaching. But then about a year later, I realized, I kind of missed the practice of law. And so I ended up getting into blogging, not with kind of outside of the law. And that's when I started realizing when I was working and meeting bloggers and going to blogging events that, wow, all these bloggers have these amazing businesses, but yet there's no lawyer that kind of understands what they do. And so I started talking to them and I started learning about what was unique to their industry. Then I met Danielle. And she sort of had the same idea that there was this real kind of vacuum of knowledge of people who understood the business of blogging at the time. Now it's changed so much even a few years later. And we got together and started #legal.
That's such a great story. And there's so many parts of that I want to dive into. First of all, the teaching. How did you transition into teaching while at Big Law?
So I actually started teaching when I was working for the judge as a clerk. So I got a call that they were looking for legal research and writing professors, and writing was my specialty both when I was at Big Law as a litigator and then when I was the clerk for the judge. Obviously all I did was write. And Seton Hall, my alma mater, was looking for law professors, adjuncts that could teach writing. And they were looking for adjuncts who not only could write, but also kind of had that real world experience that they could talk to the students about and mentor those students. And so I put in an application. I was lucky to be hired, and I've been teaching off and on at Seton Hall ever since. It's been, I think 5 or 6 years now. I'm actually starting a class this month. I'll be teaching Appellate Advocacy there.
So you're clearly very good at what you do. And I think being good at the practice of law and being good at legal research and legal writing obviously opened up opportunities for you. I'd be interested to know what you missed about the practice of law, I guess, once you got to just be doing the teaching.
I actually miss that day-to-day interaction with clients. I really miss the feeling that I was actually helping somebody. And I got little bits and pieces of that in Big Law. Occasionally I would actually get to talk to clients. And when I worked for the judge, you definitely felt like you were helping people because, deciding cases definitely, assisting the judge in deciding cases definitely makes you feel like you're doing good. But I missed, and I really wanted that feeling that I was actually kind of working with one-on-one with clients and kind of using my brain in that way. And so that's really what I found was missing and why I was so interested in kind of forming my own practice. And the idea of working with small businesses, particularly women, which is the area that tends to be the majority of my clients, was really interesting to me because I'm really excited to help empower women and empower female small business owners.
I would be interested in your thoughts on how much you think the type of relationship you are able to have with those clients matters versus the type of clients you have. Because I think there's two parts to kind of the client relationship, and often for Big Law associates, we don't get either.
Yes.
We're neither working with clients that we love, nor are we getting kind of the substantive relationship. But I don't know, how do you think those two pieces work together?
So I'm really lucky that I'm able to marry both. I both love the substance of what I'm doing for them, and I frankly love all of my clients. I love what they're doing and how passionate they are about what they do, because as a small business owner, you have to be. At Big Law, I actually did have a lot of client interaction. I happened to work for a pretty amazing partner who gave me a lot of responsibility, but those clients were banks. Yeah. And so there wasn't the passion I think those clients felt because they were going to their 9-to-5 job, which I understood. They weren't invested in it in a way that my current clients are. This is their everything. They sacrifice so much in order to run those businesses, and they're juggling so many different things that I think having both is really where you get a lot of that happiness from.
Which one would you say is more important if you had to pick? I'm just interested in this because I think that a lot of people kind of are in a situation where they are stuck doing one or the other. Like they love their clients, but don't necessarily love the way they get to work with them, or
Sure.
They'll love the work, but the clients aren't that great. And which one would you prioritize if you could only have one?
For me, it would be the connection with my client.
Yeah.
There is just something so satisfying about a client who is struggling with an issue or who has a concern or who honestly is just trying to make her business better. And to be able to assist her in doing that is just the greatest feeling. And listen, forming an LLC for someone, it's not the most exciting work in the world. It gets to be formulaic after a while. But to form that LLC for a person who's never had a company before and to talk to them about how they maintain the proper corporate form and how their business is going to be protected and how they can now sleep at night, that they don't have to worry about their house being taken if something were to happen, that's really where the excitement for me comes in.
That makes perfect sense. And I had never really thought about this before because I think sometimes when people go into Big Law, they're chasing the other part, right? Like they're chasing, people know they aren't going to be that invested in the clients necessarily, but they're chasing the sophisticated work and the intellectual, what they believe to be the intellectual substance. Mm-hmm. And that may not be enough.
I mean, I had that, right? I did that. I worked on multi-billion-dollar securities fraud cases, and I worked on extremely complicated antitrust cases, exciting legal stuff. I did some constitutional law stuff. It was cool. And when I worked at the judge, I worked for a federal judge. I was writing these unbelievable opinions for her, really sometimes things that had never been written about before. And there was satisfaction there, but not the satisfaction that I have now. For me, it is definitely that connection with the client, because you just feel like you're making such a big, I feel like I'm making such a big difference in somebody's life. And that feels really good.
That's fantastic. So I would really like to transition a little bit, because before we got on, we were talking about kind of what it takes to be a happy lawyer. And one of the things that you've mentioned is that you think that it's really important to be able to set boundaries and say no to things that aren't really working for you. Why do you think that people struggle with saying no, especially lawyers? I think we struggle with it quite a bit.
I think there's kind of two parts to that question. I think that we frequently as lawyers are overachievers. So we think we can have it all and do everything. Even though as the older I get and the more experience I have, I realize there's really no such thing as having it all. I think that's part of it. I think there's also just this, think about back when you were in law school and all the things you were juggling and thinking about and trying to do, and really is required of you to do. It's just the expectation as a lawyer is that you can handle all of it. And so I think it's conditioned in us that no is not really a word you can say. I also think women face that uniquely, that difficulty in saying no, because I think sometimes are a little bit more think of things a little bit more emotionally than men do. And so our need is always to say, well, we want to just kind of handle everything. And so I think those two things coupled together can frequently make it difficult to say no.
Do you ever feel like maybe people also don't anticipate that other people are reasonable, or that they think people are too reasonable? I can't tell which one it is. Like, they either think that people are only requesting of them things they would believe to be reasonable, so they should say yes, or they don't think people would respond reasonably to a no. I don't know.
I think it's the latter.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think that if you're talking uniquely about, big law and law firms, I think it tends to be the latter.
I would agree, but I think that sometimes you see in young lawyers who are early on in their careers, they don't know what their day's supposed to look like, so they say yes to everything. Mm-hmm. And because I have that when I work with junior associates, and I genuinely am like, do you have time? I don't want you to take it on if you don't have time, but I have no idea what your schedule is. And I'm actually going to be frustrated if you say yes to me and then push it back till 1 a.m. when I needed it long before that.
Sure.
But they think, I guess to your point, they think I wouldn't take no well.
I think there's a certain culture at certain places that perpetuates that also. I had that I definitely felt that experience, not from every person that I worked with, but there were definitely some partners that I've worked with in my past life in law firms that no wasn't an option.
Yeah, that's fair. So how did you get more comfortable saying no and setting boundaries?
I just had a moment where I had overcommitted and I had to get it all done. And I realized I was doing nobody a service because I was pulling an all-nighter in order to finish two things, one of which I should have said no to. And I realized I was doing a disservice to my client. They were not going to get my best work. And I just had this kind of epiphany moment where I said, nobody can make this judgment for me but me. Mm-hmm. And so I need to set that boundary for myself. And if where I'm working doesn't respect that boundary, it's not the right place for me.
Wow. I feel similarly, and I've been very lucky to work with people who have been quite respectful of my boundaries. But how do you kind of decide when to say no and what to say yes to?
I think it really is such a personal thing. For me now, I have to know that I'm getting some kind of benefit from it. And that benefit can be a lot of different things. It's not just a monetary benefit, but there has to be some benefit because unfortunately, because I juggle so many different things, every minute of my day is sort of scheduled to something. And so everything I say yes to takes a minute from something else. And so in order for me to say yes to something, it has to almost trump another thing that I'm going to have to not do because you only have so many minutes in the day. And so for me, it becomes a balancing of what's going to give and what is the benefit of this to me. And benefit can mean lots of things. Like I said, sometimes it's, for example, for me, I have a rule that I have 1 hour of the day that's mine. It's nobody else's. It's not work. It's not family. It's not friends. It's nothing. It is my 1 hour. Nothing trumps that hour unless there's an emergency. And so I make sure that that's scheduled into my day and I figure things out around it. And so making that decision is difficult, but that benefit to me, there is very little that is more beneficial to me than that 1 hour I take for myself.
That's so great. How do you make sure that happens at the same time every day, or do you make sure that you put it into the day at the beginning of the day?
I do it each week.
Okay.
Typically for me, it's exercise because I kind of need that. I enjoy working out and it gives me an energy and it sort of helps me clear my head and it helps me focus. So I schedule a gym class every single day that I can't cancel at the last minute or I get charged. And so I don't want to have to pay the $20. And so it forces me to go. And I look, I actually have a reminder in my calendar every night at 9:00 to say, look at your calendar the next day, make sure you can make that gym class. If not, cancel it, but only cancel it if you really, really can't make it. And I make it almost every single day.
That's such a good tip, because I think people think that because something is important, they'll make time for it last minute. Do you know what I'm saying? Like people think that, oh, I know I want to have this hour and I'll make sure it happens, but they aren't really, really conscious and intentional about it. And you know how the life of a lawyer is. If you don't put it in, it doesn't happen.
That's exactly right. And that's what I was finding. It was frustrating because I knew I needed that time to myself and I'm not just juggling my business, but I have 2 small children, all the things that come along with that as well. And so I have to make that hour for myself or I'm not the best lawyer. I'm not the best mom. I'm not the best spouse. I'm, none of those things.
Self-care is so important. And I know that people talk about it more and more now, but it's great that you built that in. And I would love to know more about your kind of time management, scheduling. How does all that work? Because as somebody with 2 small children herself, most days it all kind of holds together. Some days kind of flows past the 24-hour time period into the next day. But what are your techniques for making sure that everything kind of that needs to get done gets done?
I'm a hyper schedule person. So I have multiple to-do lists. I have a calendar that is everything. I keep my calendar electronically. We have a family calendar that's incorporated into it. So everybody knows where everybody else needs to be. And I schedule all of that first, and then I go and I look at my to-do list and I look at all my phone calls and all my meetings and everything that needs to get done. And then my tasks get put in between all of those things. And then I won't lie, I do work a lot at night after my kids go to bed. My kids happen to go to bed fairly early, around 7:15. So I have time to eat, and then I typically go back to work. But I only do that if I have to. So I'm just extremely scheduled and I know how long things are going to take me. The other kind of interesting thing with my practice is that my clients are small businesses, so they are quite budget conscious. So frequently I only have a certain amount of time to get something done for them. And I've quoted them a certain amount of time. And so I want to be able to get it done in that amount of time. So it definitely forces me to be really efficient. And that makes a difference as well.
How often do you do your schedule? Do you do it like every night before you go to bed, or how does that all fit in? Just taking the time to make the lists and to build the schedule and to fill out all the calendars. Because I am the same way. We literally have 3 calendars in our kitchen.
Yeah.
Because my husband's only allowed to write on the one that's the white erase board, because he can't write on the permanent calendar.
We have Outlook. We do calendar invites. So anytime anyone wants to schedule something, we send a calendar invite to each other so that, we know where everything is and how everything is. I do my schedule for the week on Sunday nights.
Okay.
So I sit down. I have a lovely notebook that I use. One side is a blank page where my to-do list, my giant to-do list goes. And then the other side has little blocks for each day. And I schedule each task I need to do throughout the week that I know I need to do on a Sunday. And I schedule them for each day. my appointments all go into my actual calendar that lives on my iPhone, my Mac, my iPad. It lives everywhere.
Yeah.
It's all synced up. And so I do that. And then obviously things pop up during the week and things just get shifted around and moved around, and I figure it out that way. But I have a roadmap of my week every Sunday night so that Monday morning when I get up and start working, I don't have to worry about it.
And so you integrate family stuff and work stuff all at the same time into the same calendar?
Yes, I have one calendar.
I love that. I'm a huge calendar fanatic, and we have a family Google calendar, and I have an Outlook calendar at work, and I do all the integration manually because I like to make sure that everything fits and that I'm not accidentally double scheduling things, because I've been known to do that if I just accept invites without checking. And then my husband puts his on the whiteboard, and those get inputted if they're approved.
I always giggle if I send a calendar invite and it gets declined. I'm like, what? Not cool.
That's so funny. How old are your kids, by the way?
I have an almost 5.5-year-old and an almost 3-year-old.
Oh, wow.
Yes, 2 boys.
I have 2 boys as well.
They're crazy.
Do they get along?
They do. They are best friends. Actually, they recently begged us for bunk beds.
Oh, so my goodness.
They now live in the same room and they have bunk beds, and there is so much excitement. They are great. They love each other. They are very, very fun.
Yeah, no, my boys have always been in the same room. We put the baby in his room from very early on, and it was a little touch and go for a while there because he would try to share his blankets and toys with the infant. He loved him to death, basically. But now that we need to get the baby out of his crib, but we know they'll end up in the same bed, so we are just not sure how safe that's going to be, so we're trying to figure out.
The bunk beds have been amazing, actually, I have to say. We just moved them about a month or 2 ago, and it has been fantastic.
Well, the older one is only 3.
Yeah, he might be a little young.
Well, and he's still getting potty training at night, so I just am worried him trying to get down at 1 a.m. to go to the bathroom when he's half asleep.
Yes.
Will lead to disaster.
We do have stairs on our bunk bed.
Ooh, interesting. All right.
Not a ladder. It's stairs, and it's awesome because my guy comes out at 1 o'clock in the morning to go, and he is absolutely, completely asleep. He's sleepwalking practically. I don't know how he does it, and he's been fine. So the stairs make a really big difference.
The problem is that the baby could get up the stairs.
Yeah, if he comes out. My little guy doesn't come out.
See, my big guy is the one who won't leave his bed. Even now at 3, when he wakes up in the morning, he calls for us before he gets out of bed.
Oh, that's cute.
Whereas the baby is ready to go.
Got it. How old is he?
He's 16 months.
Oh, yeah, he's little.
Yeah, no, but he is the one who, if you leave him by the back door long enough, he's out in the backyard, just wandering around. And you're like, what are you doing out here?
That's my big guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The older one just never did it, so we just are so clueless to lock doors. Basic parental safety.
That is so funny. I get it.
Well, it has been so nice to chat with you. And before I let you go, I just wanted to know, are there any resources that you could share that you think would be helpful for other young lawyers who are earlier along their journey?
I think the best resource are other people, mentors. Ooh. I think the best thing that ever happened to me, as I like to call it, a baby lawyer, was finding a really awesome lawyer who was a few years older than me, who took me under her wing and kind of showed me the way. For me, it's always about the relationships, because I think lawyers who've been doing a little bit longer just see things a lot more clearly than you can when you're first starting. It's hard. And so I think mentors are really the best resource that you can find, a sounding board. Sometimes you feel crazy. And it's really nice to have someone to say, no, you're not. Or it's nice to have someone to say, hey, take a break. Or it's time for you to say no, you're stretched too thin. So I think that a mentor is frankly the best resource that you could possibly have.
Do you have any insight into, 1, how to find a good mentor, and 2, what to look for in a mentor?
Sure. I think the number one thing to look for is someone you can trust, because you need to have that relationship with somebody who you can really be yourself with and be honest with. And so I think you need to take your time in choosing that mentor, see how that person works, see if they share a similar working style to you, see if they're open to having conversations with you, if they'll be honest with you, but yet they're also professional. I think you sort of just click with somebody, you kind of sort of know, much like in relationships when you meet someone and you're like, wow, you're going to be my new best friend. It's kind of the same feeling, right? And so when you meet, I think, someone who is doing what you want to be doing, that's the best kind of mentor.
And where do you find these? Do you think this should be someone you work with, or do you think you should really look outside of work so you can get a different perspective, or either?
It could be either. I really think it's just looking around at the people that you're interacting with, or that friends of friends or something who's doing what it is you want to be doing. And I think a lot of it is kind of sort of knowing where you want to go. And so if you look at what that person is doing, they can kind of walk you through their journey, but also give you perspective, because everybody's journey is so unique. I think they can give you a really different perspective as to how they got there, but also kind of help you navigate through your journey as well.
What would be a good way to reach out to a mentor? And do they need to know, I guess, that they're your mentor? How official should this relationship be?
I think it really depends. I mean, I've frankly had law students come to me and say, will you mentor me? And I always say yes. I think it's really fun. And then I've had other situations where it's never been expressly said, but that person just kind of used to plop themselves in my office and talk to me about the stuff they were going through. And it sort of just naturally happened. So I don't know. I think it really just depends on who you are and how type A you are, I guess, about that relationship. And I think everybody's kind of different in that way. I think it can really be either way. I've never expressly asked someone to be my mentor. I've just sort of foisted myself upon them and said, you will be my mentor, because I'm going to be in your office every single day. But for me, the people that I've mentored, I've both been asked, and then on the other side, I've had people who just appeared in my office every single day. And I said, oh, okay, no problem.
That's great. I love that so much. Because I definitely, when you say that, realize that I'm probably mentoring a lot of people. But because I'm type A and they didn't officially ask me, I didn't really realize it.
I have no doubt that you are.
That's amazing. So what's the best way for people to learn more about what you do and follow your work?
Sure. You can check out our website, which is #legal.com. You can email me at jamie@#legal.com. And you can also find us on Facebook. We may even be on Instagram and Twitter as well. So any of those places would be great.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for being a part of this project and kind of sharing your story with my audience. My last question for you today is, what do you think sets apart those people who find happiness from those whom happiness continues to feel out of reach?
I love that question, by the way. And I really think it is the power of saying no. Because when you say no, you're essentially choosing yourself and you're choosing your happiness, because you're realizing that that is not a fit for you, which means you know what is a fit for you and what you can do and what you can achieve. And so if you are one of those people who is striving for success and you are motivated and excited by what you do, and yet you can still say no, I think that's how you achieve that happiness, because you know what you want and you know the best way to kind of go get it.
That's such a fantastic answer. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed chatting with you today.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me for the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. Please head over to my website, www.thehappylawyerproject.com, for more information from today's show. While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave me your thoughts on the show. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or follow me on Instagram. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to head over to iTunes to subscribe and review the show. As you know, each rating helps more listeners find the show and helps me get awesome guests on here for you guys. If there's anyone you'd like me to have on the show, or if you'd like to be on the show, head over to my website and let me know, or send me an email at akoma, OKEOMA, @thehappylawyerproject.com. A special thanks to everyone who's left a review, sent me an email, or reached out to me in any way. I appreciate you. Thank you again for spending this time with me, and if you would like to learn more about working in your gift and living your passion, head over to the website for a free gift. Until next time, bye!